Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You may have noticed that I've changed my form of greeting, basically because at this point I know that I'm supposedly addressing the citizens of the planet. Okay, the citizens of the planet, not the serfs. We've been there and done that. Okay, you'll notice tonight that I'm much calmer. Not necessarily because of feeling calm, but I've just begun to come to a conclusion that is so startling that basically if I weren't extremely calm, I would be very scared indeed. I mean, back into the hospital type of scared. And of course we want to avoid that at all costs. But I'm going to assume something very startling for just a moment. Probably the most frustrating thing I tried to do just today was I tried to get back in touch with what I've been calling the United States territorial government. And I don't generally refer to them as the United States of America because I want to set up a different premise. Okay, I want to set up, for example, the premise in most people's minds. See, most people don't think about the implications of a multinational corporation being basically a different model for government. People talk about different models for business all the time. But, what I've learned from reading, say, Robert Heinlein and a few others, is that at least in the 21st century, the minimum social model we can expect for the 21st century is that there will arise entirely different types of nations, okay, than most people are thinking of. Then it occurred to me that since everybody on planet Terra is effectively planet-bound, then the truth is that even if you take the world headquarters, say, of a multinational corporation, such as, for example, Google, okay, and the thing is, while I'm going on camera, while I'm going into the data stream, okay, into the cyber world, right? One of the interesting things about the cyber world as a conceptual box is that people tend to think of that particular conceptual box as having, quote unquote, an infinite size. Space, the final frontier. Okay, that's an idea of like an infinite size. Okay, Google itself, on the other hand, has a finite size, and it has corporate offices somewhere, and I believe it's like California or something. But anyway, Google has a centralized corporate office that they consider their legal territorial geographic address to where, like, if President Obama's goons wanted to arrive in the jackboot someday, there would be a particular office that they would have to go raid in order to, arrest the next mad scientist wanting to control the world. Okay, now let's just set aside whether I've actually proven that, like, as a psychological phenomenon, nearly everybody in the human condition, best beloved, wants to control the world. Okay. Our friend Lord was very scared about that. Okay, I'm very scared about that, as any evangelical Christian would be. All right. I'm not really interested in, like, you know, polarities like Joel Osteen versus John Hagee, for example, or you know, George Carlin versus John MacArthur. Okay, where like the one is a saint and the other is a heretic. I'm not really interested in that. You know, you can draw those boundaries in your experiment if that's what you want to do. But what I've been trying to arrive at is, okay, if everything I'm coming to believe about the nature of what really is going on, you know, the whole holographic paradigm for an individual universe thing, let's assume that I'm going to buy into that whole idea that, like, mind is superior to matter. Okay, so anything that prizes the matter over the mind has missed the point of the exercise. Okay, but setting all that aside, because I really don't have the hard science background to prove any of that stuff. Okay, you know, I call those people wizards just as easily as I call them scientists. It's just a convenient shorthand. All right, I'm not necessarily implying disobedience to God, even by calling a man or woman a wizard. Okay, the only rule I have about calling a person a prophet is you can't really tell. You know, it's kind of like a martyr. Okay, as the movie Dogma put it, the catch within, like, most of the magical systems in the world is that, you know, bingo, if you find yourself a martyr for any given political or religious cause, the catch about martyrs, the funny thing about martyrs is they've got to die first. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I have to assume somewhere along the line that the Lord Jesus Christ has met his part of a bargain. I want to be very careful here, because I'm not wanting to speak as if, like, one can force God into anything any more than he wants to force us. Okay, that's kind of the definition for me of, you know, the boundaries of absolute good have to include free will. They can't transcend it. Okay, because otherwise you get an outcome like the Borg, you know, resistance is futile and all that stuff. But, you know, I've been spending a lot of time, you know, just clarifying the boundaries between, say, light and shadow in the universe. And you know, this is like as ethical transmortal superpowers. Okay, those of you who are interested, go watch Babylon 5. I don't have time to get into that, but there's a whole thematic element in Babylon 5 that refers to, well, you know, let's suppose that the Vorlons, for example, are the agents of order, the lords of order. Okay, and that the shadows represent, like, ultimate darkness to, you know, all of the sentient humanities, by which I'm including several different groups of aliens, you know, all of the sentient humanities throughout that particular galaxy. Okay, and the boundaries of the problem, yeah, it was dealt with in Babylon 5 in a different way, because, like, who was it, Sheridan, eventually told both representatives of both powers, you know, we're grown up now, so get the hell out of our galaxy. I don't necessarily think you can do that, because, for one, I think we're in a much stranger place than we believe. we're in a much stranger place than we believe. We're in a much bigger place than we believe. Just in terms of like sheer dimensional deep structure. Okay, the speculation exists in several quarters that this might actually be part of a multiverse, in which case, to me, you've given more glory to the great name of God, not less. Okay, that's where I disagree with Dawkins. But let's just assume that like the nature of what I'm going to call the magical bargain involves throwing your all in the spiritual sense into like whatever project you want to put together and manifest in the earth. Okay, that's a basic assumption that if I'm correct, I must have learned that at some point from David Wood. Okay, because that's so far in line with his philosophy that I understand the piece of the pie that he wants. Okay, I understand the piece of the pie that he wants, and please bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking for not just like the dictatorial ability to dictate best practices for like all the religions in the world. I'm not saying that. I want a very, very small piece of, not the Catholic versus Protestant tradition, but the Catholic and Protestant tradition within Christendom. I want I want access to that particular faction among men and women on this planet who are prepared to follow after me as a mentor. Okay, just explaining the boundaries of the bargain. Now, the thing is, if there is a God, you can't force God into anything. But I just recently had an experience where, like, in interacting with our secret, top secret Canadian research lab, suddenly there's this emergence of this top level group at this particular site, and I can let you know it's a relatively well known social networking site. I'm not going to reveal the name here in a public video because it would destroy everything. Well, not destroy everything, but like people would. I'm worried because if I understand my correct place in their experimentation model, I'm worried they may actually have to go find someone else. Okay. And that would be goodbye money, that would be goodbye career. That all of that goes without saying. What I'm getting at very profound, very up to now subconscious level that I'm learning to acknowledge consciously for the first time, is that maybe the magical bargain with the deity is of a completely different nature than we thought. For example, why do most of my friends within Christendom tend to treat the whole process of evangelism as if it were like a 15-minute long one-time offer? Okay, that's one of the things that really ticks me off, is I happen to believe that if, as Charlie Daniels speculated, the trouble with the devil is that he always comes back. Devil came back to Georgia, right? Right? So, if the trouble with the devil is that he always comes back, okay, then the devil's trouble with God is that God also always comes back. Okay? And it's not so much that I believe that the magical bargain we've made is insoluble. I'm starting to get the barest indications that yeah, it may actually be soluble. But I'll tell you what I want to do, ladies and gentlemen. What I want to do is I want to have, say, primary access to like any creative artists who want to jump on board with me. Okay, I want to be Mr. Board of Directors, CEO for like the whole tradition of what Veritasia is for basically at least my natural lifetime. Call it an irrevocable executive package. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I want to like never retire and be some corporate bigwig for the rest of my life. No, first of all, I don't think the nature of our work is going to be quite like that. There's a place called what is it? The Arcanum, that was just recently founded, and basically what it is a guild of digital photographers, okay, who have taken somewhat of an adapted an adapted wizardry, Dungeons and Dragons, levels upon levels sort of a model for the training of new artists. And see, they have a very interesting place in the history of the internet as well, because I'm just barely able to form some idea of the convergence in time. Okay, let's take Wizard Lay Coombs, for example. Lay Coombs is one of these people. He should be in my direct upline. He should be one of my directors under First Wizard Lawrence Tam, who is by definition like one of the people who is not just blowing up, but maybe the top earner in like all of Empower Network. But anyway, let's take Wizard Lay Coombs for example. Few months back, I can't really tell you when, there was a Star Wars based marketing campaign built on the idea, and this is where it begins to scare me. Okay, there was a message that went out that that had basically all the thematic elements of the George Lucas Star Wars metaphor as part of in a derivative works relationship to. See, this is where the intellectual property questions get really, really interesting, because now you have things like Disney buying up Lucasfilm's interest in Star Wars. Anyway, Lay Coombs took something off the market at about the same time as I fell off the grid and into the literal locked ward rabbit hole. Okay, here's the thing. I've got two of my friends basically more or less recruited into the deep structure of my future company. Okay, I don't want to call it a company at present because legalistically it's not in terms of hard paper law. What I believe about the internet, or at least I'm coming to believe about the internet, is that the reason hard paper law is too slow is that the internet is actually good at generating the damn stuff. Okay, you hammer out the agreement somewhere in cyberspace, put it through an expert system built by lawyers for lawyers, and you get you get so many pages of data that actually represent a a binding legal agreement in jurisdiction and what X, Y, Z. And I mean, I'm learning more and more every day about the structure of such agreements. I began my little internet quest, I want to say about 10 years ago. And for year after year after year after year after year, I was basically struggling with a blogspot blog. Now my understanding of internet law is not so much that I've learned, so much more about boundaries of intellectual property. I'm not saying that. So, what are you saying, Fox? What does the fox say? What I am saying is that I'm beginning to spot some very interesting, if not disturbing, convergences in history based on all of the hard evidence I've been able to gather over. And this is surprising. I mean, I had to go back into my own office and realize that, for example, you could basically call this a wizard's book because it has a progression of handwritten notes that I have taken over like the past 6 years over the whole science of success. Okay? And the thing that makes it like unfit for a dissertation is that, to me, it feels incomplete. Right? But here's the thing. If I took it into like an old style hard paper law court, their lawyers could basically take every concept in this book apart. Never mind that it was like not written in professional legalese. I'm just saying the fact that it was written down at all means that somebody can do type up a transcript of whatever the entire thing means. Hell, they can feed that into a computer program, into a matrix these days. But, that's what I mean. Hard paper law, industrial age law, has been too slow for a long time. Okay? Only we haven't really developed the modalities, certainly not worldwide. My God, no. Certainly not worldwide when like they, one thing I will say about the territorial United States and Canada, for example, is that they are, two of the best wired nations on the entire planet, whatever that means. Okay, they've just recently discovered and or created the data cloud. Okay, that can't have been an innovation that happened too many years back. What is the cloud able to do? Well, the cloud is able to take like individual desktops and not just make them obsolete, but it's the new upper boundaries of the science of computing, as far as I'm aware. And it can't have been around for all that long. Maybe a decade, maybe less. That's just an intuitive estimate. And bear in mind, if I get hard number details wrong, it's because I suffer from a peculiar kind of fuzzy short-term memory loss. Okay, it has to do with my post-traumatic stress disorder. Ultimately has to do with my Cassandra complex. Okay, I'm laying claim to all of these things in the same post, so you'll begin to see where I'm going. Okay, anyway, half-hour lecture coming up. Okay, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to remind myself to be brief, wrap it up, Fox. Anyway, there's very interesting convergence in history. Let's say, you know, the old style corporate internet, the way I used to think of it, could walk into, you know, an old style industrial age paper driven court, and they could have all this paper generated by what? By their computers, by their computing platforms. That's where we've come to. Okay, so like the next hypothesis to test out is, anybody got a model for like Ender's Game? Okay. Anybody got a model for like Ender's Game? Because here's the thing. I'm assuming that the reason I have permission to do what I do at this level is that there's a one-to-one correspondence going on. In other words, I'm no longer afraid of, you know, for example, you know, digital rights violations, because here's the hierarchy. Google owns Blogger, owns YouTube, and that's kind of the limited territory that I'm keeping myself at right now. Yes, I have an MSN address, I have a Yahoo address. A poor man who's smart enough has all three. I find myself a little bit annoyed by the fact that, like, every time I open up Chrome now, it wants to suddenly pass me over to, I forget whether it's MSN or Bing or whatever, but, you know, in a previous move, I crawled out of the top of the Google funnel, is what I did. Interesting, you know, that's the thing. I used to consider that kind of stress to be, you know, the virtual equivalent of a world war, and yet I fought this particular personal war within the space of like 24 hours. So yeah, there's some time compression going on in my own life as well. Okay, where am I going? Everybody has to start somewhere. So I'm going to assume once again the conspiracy of the white hats. I'm going to assume that the engineers at Google know what they're doing, God help me, okay? And nobody's really interested in forcing squips on teenagers or suddenly inventing the Borg, you know. Now, if the Daleks could say resistance is futile, that'd be kind of cool. Anyway, no, my point is that, like, regardless of who owns what particular clip, ladies and gentlemen, the fact is that there's a hell of a lot of music and movie footage available in YouTube, which you have to understand, YouTube is not basically a social network. It's functionally another search engine. It's another type of search engine than Google. It was a search engine technology that was specifically built to hold video clips. Okay. So, that's where I am, and I'm going to stay right here in what I'm considering the White Tower for a while. I won't necessarily say that I won't go messing around in the Black Tower's secret lab. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I find it comforting that even as a multinational, I'm now able to define Google as, you know, having a concept set of a finite size. Okay, having a place within the history of planet Earth. And if I'm right about any part of my speculations as to my place in the history of man, okay, see the Terra 2014 campaign for details. See, I plan on writing all that up. But anyway, yeah, we're talking about a career level blueprint with an acknowledged possibility for I may just have a place in history, ladies and gentlemen. And while I don't really want to rule the whole world, the idea that I have a place in history that can be defined is very, very comforting to me. It tells me I'm on the radar, folks. You know, I'm on track. See, the definition of sin in the Christian tradition is quite simply to miss the mark. Could that not be for you to set your own goal? See, we tend to think of God as being somebody mysterious and outside ourselves who sets the goals for us and then forces our minds into conforming with them. You know, just to cooperate with the atheist nightmare for just a moment. The real God is not like that at all. Okay, what he does is he makes a free will bargain with his creatures that is not necessarily, you know, like I said, and this is one of the things that really annoys me. He makes a free will bargain with his creatures who are serving him out of love, out of sheerest affection. And, you know, that's what we want the atheists to understand about us, if they ever grasp anything, is, you know, God is the very definition of love in the Christian tradition. Not because the ability to, quote unquote, perceive God is some kind of extrasensory perception, not in the way most people would define it as. It isn't. Okay, you know, paranormal phenomena, weird quantum phenomena. I don't want to even get into that, you know, that occult-bounded subject. Because, you know, that's one of the things I've been shouting from the housetops, if anything, is I am not a witch. Okay, call me a heretic if you like. And with apologies to my friend Merlinus, name is Mark Richards. He may not recognize that he and I were street buddies long time back. Okay, remember emo Mark? Okay, I'm just leaving the tiniest hint just in case he ever gets to see this. Because if my place in history is secured correctly, he's probably going to see this. Peace be upon him if he's still alive. Okay? And what I want to report to my friend Mark is, just as you predicted, sir, unfortunately the hawk has died. Okay? I invested 13 years with the man and he committed suicide due to schizophrenia. Go figure. Alright? So, Boundaries of Intention Part 2. Well, I keep trying to title this thing and it's rambling. I'm getting closer to whatever is usually meant in the scientific community by an actual dissertation level proof of thesis closing arguments type of statement. You know, I'm not saying I'm there yet, because I'm there, basically I'm there when the money piece cracks. That's first of all. Okay, I'm there when I'm able to close a legitimate money deal with, like, somebody who is actually coming to me on the strength of whatever I've put on the table. Okay. That's what I mean. There's a documented principle that you ain't seen nothing yet. Because I don't want to, I don't want to ruin the stuff that is in the intellectual property territory that I want to spend my career on. Why should I do that? If I give too many of my notes away, okay. And yeah, it's very tempting to give it all away for free, but that's not going to happen. I'm just going to assume that Google is effectively the white hat conspiracy, And yeah, their intelligence has limits just like anybody else. I'm calling them the smartest men in the world, not angels. Okay, they are most assuredly not angels. They are not the freaking Vorlons. Okay. Um, just having a little science fiction humor with you because like newbies jump on board all the time. We know that. Okay, good night, folks. Good night, citizens of the internet, you who are willing to take action. Okay, good night.